Hello and welcome to my tutorial video on how to connect to an Access database through Netbeans. We're going to be using the UCAN Access library. You can download it from SourceForge. The address is there, sourceforge.net/project/UCAN-access. You can also just search for UCAN Access. It's a very, very nice library. I've downloaded the most recent version of the files, which I have put into my Netbeans project folder in a folder called libraries. Let me, in fact, just take you through that. Let me just remove these. Let me delete that. Cool. Okay, so we're currently here. I've just created a new Netbeans project, straightforward standard project, and I've created a package name. And other than that, there's nothing there. Then what I did is I downloaded the database files. I made a folder called libraries in my Netbeans project in the root folder of the project. And I downloaded the 5 libraries that come with UCAN Access when you extract them. And let's add these to my project. So I don't want add library, in fact. What I want is add jar/folder. There we go. I could create a library. If I had lots of projects, I might create an Access library and I might link them there, and then, you know, it's just shorter than having to move them in and all the rest of it. The advantage of putting the libraries in the root folder is that if I copy and paste this folder somewhere, I've taken it all with me so I can open my project up in multiple things. I have also created a database called Connectivity Example, which again I've saved in the root folder of my project. Again, the reason I've put it there is because it then makes my project portable. Let's open it up. You do not need access to actually connect to the database, as long as you have an Access database. And in fact, if you got creative with creating a database and creating tables and stuff, you could do it all programmatically, so you wouldn't need Access at all. But for simplicity's sake, I have assumed that we're going to create a database in Access. So basically, I've got TBL student, which has got an auto number student ID, first name, last name, date of birth. I randomly generated all of that data. So if there's anything weird there, well, it wasn't me who did that. And then I have a TBL marks, which has got a mark ID, a student ID, which is a foreign key to this primary key there, the subject, and the mark that the student has achieved. I'm not going too complicated because I'm assuming you know how to do SQL queries, and really this is more about how do I get Java to a place where it will recognize SQL queries rather than teaching you SQL queries itself. Okay, so I think we're good to go. We've got our database. Just to show you that you don't actually need access to do anything, I'm going to just create a little snip of my student ID and columns, and let's see if I can open up a new, I can't, but I am going to, at some stage, I'm going to need the comments for TBL student as well. You know what, I'm just going to pause the video and get those all into Paint or something quickly. Okay, so back to recording again, and I have put into Snipping Tool basically just the structure of those tables. And the reason I do that is because I want to close Access, just so you can see that I really, really don't need Access in order to work with it. I've just got this up here just as a reference because I'm going to need to know the table names and the structure of the tables. Right, so let's get onto the actual programming. So let's create a new Java class. I'm going to call this SQL, or let's call it DB connection. Okay. Don't call it something like connection because that one of the classes is called connection. I think DB connection is fine. Sorry, one of the classes inside the project. And you're going to see that now, in fact, as we create that thing. So creating a connection to an Access database actually has quite a lot of, takes quite a bit of time. So if every time you ran a query, you created a new connection, you would definitely notice the lag in your project. So we're just going to create one and store it as a field in our class. And that way we can just instantiate a DB connection when we need it and then reuse the connection. Let's add import for java.sql.connection. There we go. Let's create a constructor. So public DB connection Apologies, I'm being a little bit clumsy with my keyboard. And what is that whining about? I've misspelt it. My word. All right. So the first thing we need is just a string for our connection to the database. And you don't actually even need the string. I'm just doing it to make sort of make it a little bit clearer to read. And basically, so it's JDBC : you can access. So it doesn't matter what your database is called, it's always going to be a JDBC you can access. And then because I've put it in the root folder, it's just going to be, what did I call it? I closed it. Let's go look at files. I called it connectivity example. So connectivity example.accdb. All right, and then I need to try, and my connection is equal to a driver manager dot get connection, and we're going to send it the database URL. So obviously you could just type in JDBC you can access blah 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 blah, and we need to catch. So we're going to catch an SQL exception, and let's just print out cannot connect to database plus EX. And at this point, we're going to have to import a driver manager and a SQL exception. So you know what? Let's just import java.sql.star. Right. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a little test class just to see if I've set everything up correctly. So new Java class. Let's call it our database app. Create a main method. And let's create a DB connection. Let's call it DB. And all right, let's try run that. And let's just see if we work. Let's save it so I can find my main class. And there we go, run it. And if all goes well, I won't see anything. And I, in fact, have an error. So let's just go fix that quickly. And if we take a look over here at our DB connection class, I can see that, well, it thinks this whole thing is a driver. So let's just put 2 slashes there to show that we're going through to find the file. And now if I try and run it, there we go, working perfectly. Great. All right, so now that we're working, we can continue doing something. So the first thing we want is you basically, what we're going to be returning is a thing called a result set. And a result set is basically a built-in an object that's built into the class that returns, you can think of it as like a grid of results. And basically you're going to be able to access things. You're going to have different rows of result sets, and you're going to be able to access the different columns in each row. It's slightly different to a scanner. So what happens with the scanner is that as soon as you get the next element from a scanner, it basically reads in the next line, returns it, throws it away. Whereas what we're going to be doing with our result set is we're going to be going to our the next row of our result set, and that actually moves you to that row, and then it stops there and sits there and lets you access things based on the column names, and only then when you type rs.next again does it move to the next row. So you actually want to call result set.next before you access anything, whereas in a scanner you sort of call it as you want to access something. So that's a slight difference there. Before we get there though, let's just create a little connection called public, we're going to call it get results, and it is going to return a result set. And we're going to send it a query. Okay, so this is just going to be a generic, standard, straightforward thing. And we'll say, for example, our result set, we'll create a null result set. and we'll try create a statement, which I'll call stmt, and we're going to use our connection, and we're going to call the create statement method. And that just creates an empty statement for us to work with. And then our result set will become equal to the statement.execute query and the query we sent. So basically, we're going to call get results with a query. We're then going to create a thing called a statement, and then we're going to call the execute query method on the statement with the query that we sent to the result set database. The result set method. And we need, once again, we need to catch a SQL exception. Let's just give it a little error message. Okay, it might be useful to actually just print the stack trace. However, for your project, the IB does get some of them a little bit weird about that. So that's why I'm doing these default things. In fact, not a bad idea to just put a little ex.print stack trace there. That way we're going to get the best of both worlds. We'll have our little custom error message as well as that. Right. Okay, so let's try this out. And let's go with, so let's say, so we're going to want a result set in here, which means then that we're going to want to import java.sql result set. Okay, and let's just say result set, let's call it rs again, equals db.get results, and we'll send it the query select, and this is where we want the structure. So our structure is, let's say we're going to select first name from TVL student. Is it first name or first names? First name from TVL student. Okay, and let's just run that, see if that works. We've got a problem over here. That was stupid, and we're going to return rs. Okay, which brings us to an import. So results at rs equals db.get results. Let's just see if that works. Doesn't throw up an error. And then basically if rs is not equal to null, so as you can see over here, it's null. It's null. If there's an error, it's just going to return something null. So we don't want to try and work with something if it is null. So if it's not equal to null, basically, if we take a look at our database again, we're going to have a database with the rows Akeem, Indigo, Acton, Ulysses, Alana, Wing, Lyle, and so forth. So let's do this. So then we basically want while rs.next. So what rs.next does is so it starts off, you can think of it as like row -1. We're going to have to create a little exception there. So once again, try, and we're going to catch SQL exception ex. Which means we'll need to import that, and let's just print the stack trace for now. Cool. Right, so while rs.next, so basically what this is going to do is rs.next moves to the next row if there is a next row, and if there isn't, it returns false. So this is just going to loop through everything, and we'll just print out rs dot, and then I think we want get, I think it's get string. Rs.get string, and we're going to send it, and it's the column label first name. And if I run this, I should get a whole printout of first names or an error. And okay, first name is not found. So let's change it to first name. And there we go. That's a whole column of first names. And you can see that's actually remarkably simple to get all of that. Now, you might not want to actually have a whole bunch of SQL code in your main application class. You might want to put that all in your DB connection. And I recommend that, especially for your IAB PAT. So let's do something proper. All right. So we're going to need our DB connection in here. And also it means that, you won't have to do a whole bunch of trying and catching for your SQL exceptions in your app. Have it all in one place. I strongly recommend that. So let's, instead of having a generic get results, let's have public get student English marks. Okay, we don't need to send this on a query because we're going to be doing that. And we're going to, so you can return this in whatever, I mean, we could create a student object, we could return a whole bunch of student objects with marks and everything, but I'm just going to build up a string. Okay, so, and string ret, we'll make it blank. And then we're going to basically, again, we'll have a result set, make it null. We don't actually really have to do that now because we're not returning a result set. I cannot type today. I really can't type today. Okay, and once again, we're going to try a whole bunch of stuff, and then we're going to catch a SQL exception. It's going to moan about that and say nothing throws a SQL exception, but it will soon. And we'll say could not retrieve English marks. And what you might want to do, in fact, is, I'll show you an example of that later. But for the time being, we're just going to get everybody's English marks. And we're going to have to join two tables together, and it's not hard again. So we create a statement. Okay, and we set our result set to statement.execute query, and the query I want here is select first name, comma last name, comma mark from TBL marks, inner join TBL student on TBL marks dot student ID equals TBL student dot student ID where subject equals English. Okay, if you decided you wanted to use the quotes there, you'd have to obviously escape them as such. I've got that the wrong way around, I think. Yeah, but I'm going to use the single quotes unless it really complains at me. And then what I want to do is I want to go through my query. So while rs.next, so I'm going to loop through the whole result set. And really, this should have just returned what we want. And we're going to go string ret plus equals. Let's add in rs dot get string first name. Plus space. Plus rs.getString last name plus a space, and let's say achieved plus rs.getInt, and this one was called mark plus for English, and let's make a new line. Wrong way around again. Actually, I don't know if it's right or the wrong way around. Okay, it was the right way around. What is it complaining about? We're missing result set dot get string plus space plus result set plus that plus result set. Okay, I've made a mistake somewhere. It's because I am a strint, whatever strint is. There we go. Right, and obviously we've declared ret. Yeah, apologies for that. And then right at the end, I want to return ret. Okay, so what I've done here is we've got a method with no parameters. And once again, we're just creating our statement inside here. We are executing our query, and then we're running through the whole thing and building up a string of data. So my suggestion is that you actually use this class here to return your data rather than returning the result set. And you might want to put your data into some custom classes or something like that. Like if you had a student object, you'd probably create an array of students, and you'd return an array of students rather than a string. But I should be able to print out English marks, and then we print out db.getStudent English marks. Let's run that. And once again, we have, I can't spell first name. There we go, first name, last name. Let's try run again. And I really can't spell first name. Finally, I can spell first name. And there we go. So there's our data. And let's just show you one more variation. And this variation is going to be, we'll do very, very, very similar mark. I should probably have called this like get all student English marks. Let's do that, in fact. And then get student English mark will just be one student. And let's take a string name. So then all I want now is select first name, last name, mark from TBL marks, inner join TBL student on TBL marks student ID, where instead of where subject equals English, and obviously we should be working on ID here. So in fact, we're going to make it an int. And presumably then what you would have done, like let's say you've got a student ID. So let's say you have, you might have in a GUI, you might have a table of things, of students, and you can click on something. Those students would have an ID associated with them, and you could send the ID. So where subject equals English and student ID, it's going to be ambiguous. So let's go TBL marks. In fact, I don't need to do a join if I'm using student ID. So oh, you know what? Let's do it. Let's get the first name and everything. Yeah. So and TBL marks dot student ID equals, and then we're going to add our SID. Okay, and then once again we'll still do the while rs.next thing because. Okay, well, that would actually work if it would return multiple students if we're going based on names. This would only give us one, but so I could change the while to an if. You always want to sort of double check there, and let's do that. So let's send it student ID 1, and we should get 39 back. Or let's send it student ID 2, and we should get a 29 back. There we go. We've got Indigo Garrett, who is the second student, got 29 for English. And that's basically how you can use that. I think the last thing I would want to do, let's do one more. Let's overload get student English marks. And let's do it based on first name, which, as I said, probably not a great idea, but there's a reason I want to do this for you. Okay. And the reason I want to do this is, okay, we've got, so it's now, instead of TBL marks at student ID, it's just first name. I still can't spell first name. First name equals, and the reason I'm doing this is basically we need to surround this in quotes. So I'm going to put a single quote before I end the string. Then I want my first name parameter plus another close quote. And let's just run this. Of course it's going to work because I didn't use that. Let's send it, in fact, a first name of Ulysses. And that should work. There we go. Ulysses achieved 92%. That's actually, considering the name, that's quite a good. Cool. There was something I wanted to show you. Let's just assume, let's trigger up my SQL statement. So I've just got rid of that E there, so it's not going to work. And if I run this, I get a message that doesn't really work too nicely. So the reason I'm doing this is because I quite like doing this. So what I want to print is I'm in fact going to print my statement, because it's more often than not when I make a mistake, I've messed up, in fact, my SQL statement. So let's just print that. Let's run this again. And here you can see select first name, last name from. And what you can do is you can copy and paste this query into Access itself. So yeah, this is one case. You would need Access, and then see what error message gives. And it should tell you, there's a syntax error, and hopefully then you can see the error. Otherwise, even if you don't have Access, you'll often see that you're missing a quote, or you're missing like the actual parameter or something. So I highly recommend that as a way of looking for errors. And there we go. That's how you can interact with Access in your project.